Well, hello and welcome back to the Politically Incorrect Redneck. This is George Pern, part of the WRVO radio network with Reno Viola's Outdoors. We've got another special show lined up for you this week. We've got our good friend back from the Canadian Sports Shooting Association, our acting executive director, Tony Bernardo. Tony, how are you today?
Well, I'm good, George. How are you?
Well, welcome back again. Now, remember at the end of my show last week, I said we may have a new guest, but I've gotten a lot of feedback on the show, and I guess we really didn't discuss what it is you're up to now. What are you doing for us now, and what's the purpose of the organization?
Okay, well, I mean, what we do is we represent firearms owners at a number of different levels. In the last several weeks, we've been involved with a couple of fights with the provincial chief firearms offices.
Right.
Where they were doing rather draconian edicts against firearms owners. We've gotten directly involved, and in Ontario, we've filed a lawsuit against the chief firearms office, and in Alberta, we openly defied the chief firearms office at the Calgary Gun Show to fight for the rights of gun owners. Now, that's just what we've been doing on a couple of provincial levels. On the federal level, recently we met with a trade attaché from a country that I can't mention on the air.
Okay.
But they make many very fine firearms in that country, and we're dealing with the trade attaché to make sure these things can get into Canada unimpeded.
Right.
We've been working with Explosives Branch of Natural Resources Canada on the new hand-loading regulations that we expect to be coming down soon.
Yeah, I heard there were some regulations on different amounts of powder and things that you can keep.
Well, there always was, you know, and there have been regulations in place since, I think, 1912.
Right. So they want to change all that?
Oh, but they're changing it much for the better.
Oh, I'm sure they are.
Oh, yeah. But the old regulations said wonderful things like you're allowed to have a reasonable quantity of ammunition.
Right.
Well, reasonable quantity is up to the judge.
Yes. And,
you know, you get in some downtown Toronto judge, he says, 20 rounds, well, that'll kill 20 moose. That's pretty reasonable.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
And, of course, for most firearms owners, that's not even a half hour at the range. So,
right.
You know, the criteria of what is reasonable varies immensely depending on who's making it.
Oh, absolutely.
We've been able to successfully remove a lot of that stuff from the Act. The new changes that are going to come down, like I can't say much about them because they haven't been announced yet.
Of
but
course.
They're significantly better.
Well, you know, anybody can always say they heard it here first on the Politically Incorrect Redneck. There's nothing wrong with that.
No, that's right. But like I say, things are going to be a major improvement there. We're also expecting some huge changes to come out of the government on a couple of other issues. Again, I can't talk about what they are, but stuff should be coming soon. We just finished up working for firearms owners at the United Nations at the Arms Trade Treaty talks.
Oh yeah, that's a scary one.
It was a positive experience.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, we have been involved with the United Nations and the firearms treaties since 1996. And since then, I've been lobbying in the UN for the rights of Canadian firearms owners, working with successive governments and with many different UN administrations. We're probably one of the oldest hands at this whole thing. People have to remember that this whole UN project thing originated in Canada in 1995 when the government of Canada held a meeting in Cairo, Egypt, bought and paid for by the citizens of Canada.
Oh, okay.
Talk about worldwide gun control projects.
No, that's our tax dollars hard at work right there, isn't it?
Absolutely. This goes on and on and on, and it gets pretty crazy. So, you know, the newest thing now is the Arms Trade Treaty. People have got to remember when they view this stuff, they've got to remember what it's really about.
Right.
Okay? Because what it's really about is the international trade in conventional arms.
Okay.
Specifically, the language in it exempts domestic regulation.
Okay.
So when you're hearing a lot of the people running around screaming with their hair on fire, bear in mind it does not regulate domestic ownership, and that's quite frankly some of the work we did with it.
Yeah, that's the most important thing, because let's face it, on a world level, not a lot of my listeners, or myself for that matter, is really interested in whether the U.S. can trade with Russia, or they can trade this type of weapon or that type of weapon. We're just really worried about whether we can keep the sports that we're involved in now and the pastimes that we're involved in now, and continue to enjoy them the way we have in the past.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And right out of the gate, the government of Canada led the world in the insistence of the principles of national discretion, which is UN speak, okay, which is slightly similar to Martian, okay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a little bit.
But what it really means, national discretion means that within your borders, your government has total discretion. The UN does not penetrate your border.
Well, there's good and bad there. If the UN were like the NRA, maybe we'd want them on our side.
It's like there's a lot of angst right now about end user certificates.
Okay.
End user certificates have been around almost 30 years.
Okay.
End user certificates stop at the border. What an end user certificate is, it's an international trade certificate. Okay. Stating that the company that's exporting the arms is exporting them to a legitimate importer.
Right. Yeah.
So what the end user certificate says, in conjunction with the corresponding import and export permit, is that Remington Arms in Ilion, New York, is going to ship a load of firearms to an agency in Quebec.
Right.
That is an agent for those same firearms. There's an export permit from the U.S. government, an import permit from the Canadian government, and goes with that is the end-use certificate, which states that at the end of these firearms travels, they land at the agency in Quebec. Past that point, it's domestic regulation.
Right.
Right? Mm-hmm. So, end-use certificate does not mean that they want to know that you, George, went out and bought this firearm on this date. That's a gun registry.
Right.
Not the same thing.
Yeah, and we've gotten rid of that.
Yeah, we did, didn't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's another thing we were kind of involved in.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Just a bit.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah.
Now, you were in Ottawa this weekend for something, I understand.
Mm-hmm.
What was going on there?
Well, as much as I could talk about, like I said, we met with one of the trade attaches for a major country that exports firearms, and they do export to Canada, and we'll be increasing those exports. So we want to make sure that everything's going copacetic, and that they understand what our rules allow, and that if they stay within them, we need to make sure that our corresponding import people understand that they're within those laws.
Right. So our C-17 that came down in the early 90s or late 80s, whenever that was, with the magazine restrictions and things like that, that must have created quite a headache for the manufacturers of the world.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
On top of everything else, it's really stupid.
Well, preaching to the converted again.
Well, so that's the problem with so many of the firearms laws that Canadians have to live with.
Right.
It's not that Canadian firearms owners object to firearms laws. It's just some of them are so dumb.
Yeah.
And this magazine restriction thing.
Mm-hmm.
I always make the analogy that it's the same as controlling drunk driving by putting a 5-gallon fuel tank in your car.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If you don't have enough fuel, then obviously, yeah, I get it.
Yeah, if you don't have enough fuel, then how could you drive drunk? Well, I mean,
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's perfectly understandable to me, but then again, I've spent, 9 years in grade 3.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, somebody tells me that, we're going to control crime by putting magazine restrictions. It's like, well, hey, here's your basket full of stupid. Have a nice day,
Yeah. Well, some of the interesting feedback I got last week. As you know, one of my fishing partners is pretty high up in the police department, and he used to be a sport shooter and has always wanted to get back into hunting. So he's not an anti-gunner,
right?
But he is a public safety fanatic. Mm-hmm. Okay, and we're over and we're having lunch, and he's probably going to be mad that I'm talking about this right now. But no, I'm not mentioning any names. So and besides, I'm a redneck, I'm politically incorrect, and I don't give a shit. That's the bottom line. He was saying, you know what would be really wonderful, and this was fun shooting him down on, was to have and this idea has been tossed around a few times, and it's the height of ridiculousness, is to have a central storage for firearms that we can all check our guns out and check them in, and they're guaranteed to be safe and only end up in the hands of the proper users. What a great idea, eh?
Unbelievable.
I couldn't believe that anybody was even saying that. Of course, I said to him, so this is going to be a 24-hour facility, and you're going to have one in every little hick town all across Ontario. And he says, well, no, you would, have one for Durham Region and one for Peterborough. I said, well, what if I live in Little Britain, Ontario, which is just north of Lake Scugog, and I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to decide, damn, I want to go duck hunting. So I've got to drive all the way to Oshawa before I head up to Lake Simcoe to get my firearm and wait till 9 a.m. till you guys open up. Oh, no, you wouldn't have to do that. I said, so then you mean that I could have it the night before? Well, I don't know. And I said, well, see, it can't possibly work. Shut up.
Let's get down to the real brass tacks here.
Yeah, absolutely.
The hell does any government get off telling me that I have to take my legally owned, legally acquired property, which, by the way, I'm licensed and trained to use.
Yes, yeah.
And possess.
Yeah.
And I have to take it and store it in their central storage facility, in their care. Can you think of anything that we do that with? Anything?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
I mean, how dare they even think such a thing, that we would willingly take our property and entrust it to the care of those baboons and morons?
Can you imagine? You go down to pick up your Perazzi over and under trap gun, and it's got a great big scratch down the forearm on a $9,000 piece of wood.
I'm sorry, sir, we're not responsible for damages.
Yeah, exactly. Anyways, it was one of...
okay, because you've got the entire collective group of gangs watching everybody coming and going.
Oh yeah, writing down license plate numbers. Yeah.
Very sure that when somebody leaves there with what is obviously a pistol case, you can kill them and take the pistols.
Yeah.
Great deal. You don't even have to kill them. You just say, give me the pistol.
Yeah, there was just so much wrong with it that I didn't even know where to begin.
And how do you secure it? How do you guard that against people who are not honest? This makes the assumption that we put this in the hands of public servants who are honest.
Yep.
Well, you know what? I'm honest. I know that because I got a government certificate that says so.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. My certificate says that.
Right. But do I trust a simple servant to be taking care of my stuff? I don't think so.
No, definitely not.
Definitely not. So, this whole idea is a complete non-starter. And then, when you are dealing with, like, for example, Durham Region. Let's just talk about our little Durham Region.
Mm-hmm. I'm all for that.
There's got to be 100,000 or more firearms in Durham Region. 100,000 or more.
Oh, easy.
I mean, don't forget, registered with the government of Canada, there was 7 million guns.
Right.
And Durham Region's a pretty populated area. I mean, the whole GTA is jammed full of firearms.
Yep. Yeah. And you know what? In Durham Region, it's probably more per capita than some of the other, like downtown Toronto, for example.
So when I say 100,000 firearms, I'm speaking pretty conservatively, no pun intended. Where are you going to put 100,000 firearms? GM South Plant?
Yeah.
100,000 firearms. Think of the physical dimensions of 100,000 firearms in storage.
Yeah, I know. It's just
Who's going to pay for it? That's the next step. Will the gun